The morning briefing felt like any other day at the Earth Defense Command Base. Lieutenant Marcus Reed stood at attention in the gray metal room, watching Colonel Harris point at the large screen showing a distant planet. The coffee in his cup had gone cold an hour ago, but Marcus kept holding it anyway. His team stood beside him, all 5 of them waiting to hear what their next mission would be. Velius Prime, Colonel Harris said, tapping the screen with his pointer. 3rd planet. In the Helix system, about 40 light-years from here. Our intelligence network picked up some concerning activity in their capital city. Marcus looked at the satellite images on the screen. The city looked normal enough from space, with tall buildings and wide streets. But there were red circles marking certain areas and yellow arrows pointing to what looked like vehicle movements. He had seen similar briefings before. This usually meant trouble. "What kind of activity, sir?" asked Sergeant Emma Torres, his demolitions expert. She always wanted to know if her skills would be needed. Emma had been with Marcus for 3 years now, and she could make anything explode in exactly the right way at exactly the right time. Colonel Harris switched to the next slide. Weapons trafficking. Big scale. Our sources say there's going to be a major arms deal happening in the next 48 hours. The kind that could arm an entire rebel army or terrorist group. Corporal David Kim, the communications specialist, raised his hand slightly. "Sir, do we know who's buying and who's selling?" "That's what you're going to find out," the colonel replied. "This is a reconnaissance mission. Get in, gather intelligence, identify the players, document everything, and get out. No engagement unless absolutely necessary." Marcus nodded. This was the kind of mission his team did well. They were good at staying invisible and collecting information. His team was small but skilled. Besides Emma and David, he had Private First Class Alex Rivera, who could hit a target from 2 miles away with his sniper rifle, and Private Lisa Grant, their field medic who had saved more lives than Marcus could count. "The gathering is happening in the Central District," Colonel Harris continued, showing them more satellite images. "We're seeing unusual security buildup, special vehicles moving in convoy formation, and what appears to be preparation for a major event. The whole thing screams illegal weapons auction to us." Alex leaned forward to get a better look at the images. "Sir, those security formations look pretty organized. Almost military level. Exactly our concern, Rivera. This isn't some back alley deal. This looks like nation-state level weapons trafficking, the kind that starts wars." Marcus studied the images more carefully. The satellite photos showed crowds of people gathering in what looked like open spaces. There were definitely a lot of vehicles, and the security presence was heavy. But something about it felt different from the usual arms-dealing operations they had disrupted before. He could not put his finger on what bothered him about the images. "What's our insertion method?" Lisa asked. She always wanted to know how they would get in and out safely. "Stealth pod insertion," Colonel Harris replied. "You'll drop in during their night cycle, when the activity should be at its peak. Our intelligence suggests the main event happens after dark." Emma grinned. "Night ops. My favorite." Colonel Harris pulled up equipment lists on the screen. "You'll be going in with full combat gear. Tactical armor, advanced weapon systems, stealth equipment, and surveillance gear. We don't know how dangerous this situation might become." Marcus looked at his team. They were all experienced soldiers who had been on dozens of missions together. Emma could handle any explosive situation. David could hack into almost any communication system. Alex never missed a shot, and Lisa could patch up anyone under fire. They worked well together. "Sir, what do we know about the local population?" David asked. "Are they friendly to humans?" "The Veliosians have had limited contact with Earth," Colonel Harris answered. "They're not hostile, but they're not allies either. They mostly keep to themselves. Our diplomatic relations are minimal." "And the language barrier?" Lisa wanted to know. Your translation devices should handle basic communication. But remember, this is a stealth mission. Ideally, you won't be talking to anyone. Marcus studied the mission timeline on the screen. They had 6 hours to prepare, then 12 hours of travel time to reach Velius Prime. The operation should take no more than 8 hours on the ground, with extraction scheduled for the following dawn. Questions? Colonel Harris asked. Alex raised his hand. Sir, the interference patterns in these satellite images look unusual. Are we expecting communication problems? Colonel Harris nodded. Good eye, Rivera. Yes, we're detecting some electromagnetic interference around the target area. It could be jamming equipment set up by the arms dealers to prevent surveillance or communication intercepts. Be prepared for radio silence once you're on the ground. Marcus felt that strange feeling again, looking at the images. Something was not right about this mission, but he could not identify what it was. The intelligence looked solid, the threat assessment seemed reasonable, and his team was ready. Maybe he was just being cautious. Sir, what's our rules of engagement if we encounter hostile forces? Emma asked. Avoid contact if possible. If engagement becomes necessary, minimum force required to complete the mission and extract safely. This is intelligence gathering, not a combat operation. Marcus looked at his team one more time. They all looked ready. Emma was already thinking about her equipment loadout. David was probably planning communication protocols. Alex was considering sightlines and cover positions, and Lisa was reviewing emergency medical procedures in her head. All right, Colonel Harris said, shutting off the screen. Gear up. Final equipment check in 2 hours. Departure in 6 hours. Any problems, speak up now. Nobody spoke up. Marcus felt confident in his team, even with that nagging feeling that something was not quite right about this mission. Intelligence was often incomplete, and they had succeeded with less information before. Dismissed, Colonel Harris said. As they walked out of the briefing room, Emma fell into step beside Marcus. Something bothering you about this one, boss? Marcus looked at her. Emma had good instincts about these things. Maybe. The intelligence feels too clean, too organized. But maybe I'm just being paranoid. Your paranoia has kept us alive before, David said, overhearing them. Just stay sharp, Marcus told his team. Something feels different about this one. He had no idea how different it would turn out to be. The stealth pod shook violently as it entered Velius Prime's atmosphere. Marcus gripped his restraints and watched the altitude readings drop on his display. Beside him, his team sat strapped in, their faces hidden behind tactical masks and night vision goggles. Everyone was quiet, focused on the mission ahead. 30 seconds to drop zone, David announced through their comm system. His voice sounded strange through the radio, with more static than usual. Marcus looked out the small window and saw the city below them. Even in the darkness, he could see lights everywhere. Lots of lights, more than the satellite images had shown. The whole central district was glowing with what looked like decorative illumination. That's a lot of power consumption for an arms deal, Alex observed, checking his sniper rifle one more time. Maybe they're trying to look normal, Emma suggested, but her voice carried doubt. The interference David had mentioned was getting worse. Their communications crackled with static, and the navigation system kept flickering. Marcus assumed it was enemy jamming, just like Colonel Harris had warned them about. Arms dealers often use signal jammers to prevent surveillance. 10 seconds, David called out. Everyone ready? Marcus felt the familiar pre-mission tension. His team was ready. They had done this dozens of times before. Get in, gather intelligence, get out. Simple. Then everything went wrong. Instead of the smooth, controlled descent they had planned, the pod suddenly jerked sideways. Red warning lights flashed on every display. The navigation system went completely dead, and the pod started spinning. What's happening? Lisa shouted over the alarms. Some kind of energy field, David replied, fighting with his controls. It's not jamming, it's something else. The pod systems are going crazy. Marcus looked out the window again and saw streams of colored light rising from the city below. Beautiful, flowing patterns of energy that looked nothing like military. Jamming equipment, they looked decorative, celebratory. Hold on, David warned. We're coming in hard. The pod hit the ground with a bone-jarring crash, skidded across what felt like grass, and finally came to rest against something that crumpled under the impact. Steam hissed from damaged systems, and emergency lights bathed everything in red. Marcus unbuckled his restraints and checked his team. Everyone okay? Bruised but functional, Emma reported. Same here, Alex said. All good, Lisa confirmed. David was already working on the pod systems. Bad news. We're not flying out of here. This thing is dead. Marcus opened the pod's exit hatch and stepped out, his weapon ready. His night vision goggles showed him a landscape that made no sense. According to their maps, they should have landed in an industrial sector. Instead, he saw carefully maintained gardens, flowing water features, and decorative pathways. This doesn't match our intelligence, he said quietly into his cum. His team emerged from the pod behind him, all of them in full combat gear. Tactical armor, helmets, weapons, night vision equipment. They looked like soldiers ready for war. That was when Marcus heard the voices, not the harsh shouts of arms dealers or the commands of security forces. These were different voices, surprised voices, excited voices, speaking in languages his translator couldn't immediately process. He looked up and saw them. Hundreds of beings, maybe thousands, standing in organized groups throughout the gardens. They were dressed in elaborate clothing that sparkled in the decorative lights. Many of them were not human. Marcus saw tall, elegant creatures with silver skin, others with feathered crests, and some that looked like they were made of living crystal. Boss, Emma whispered, I don't think this is an arms deal. The crowd was staring at them. Not with fear or hostility, but with curiosity and something that looked like awe. Marcus realized his team must look very strange to these people. 5 heavily armed humans in full combat gear, dropping from the sky into what was obviously some kind of celebration. A heavily armed humans in full combat gear, dropping from the sky into what was obviously some kind of celebration. A group of beings in ornate uniforms began approaching them. They moved with military precision, but their body language was formal rather than aggressive. The leader was tall and humanoid, with pale blue skin and elaborate ceremonial armor that was nothing like combat gear. Greetings, the leader said, and Marcus's translator finally kicked in. I am Captain Thane of the Royal Guard. We were not expecting representatives from Terra, but you are most welcome. Marcus felt his world shift. Royal Guard? Terra? These people knew about Earth? We apologize for the dramatic entrance, Captain. Thane continued. We have heard legends of human military traditions, but we did not realize your honor guard ceremonies were so impressive. Honor guard ceremonies? Marcus looked at his team, all of them as confused as he was. They were standing in their full combat gear, weapons visible, having just crashed a military insertion pod into what was clearly some kind of formal gathering. Sir, David whispered through their cum channel, I'm picking up broadcast signals. This isn't weapons trafficking. This is being televised. Marcus's mind raced. Televised gathering. Royal Guard. Hundreds of formally dressed beings from multiple species. Decorative lights and elaborate ceremonies. His team had not crashed into an arms deal. They had crashed into something much more complicated. Captain Thane, Marcus said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. We may have experienced some navigation errors. Could you help us understand what event is taking place here? Captain Thane looked surprised. You do not know? This is the royal wedding of Prince Kael of Velios and Princess Nira of Astrid. The ceremony that will unite our two systems in peace after generations of conflict. A royal wedding. Marcus felt like the ground was shifting under his feet. Earth's intelligence had been completely wrong. There was no arms deal, no weapons trafficking, no criminal activity. Just a wedding between two royal families trying to make peace. The prince will be honored to meet warriors from the legendary Terra, Captain Thane continued. Your reputation for courage and protection of others has reached even our distant system. Emma's voice crackled through their cum channel. Boss, what do we do now? Marcus looked around at the crowd, at his heavily armed team, at Captain Thane waiting for a response. They were supposed to be invisible intelligence gatherers, and instead they had become the center of attention at what was apparently one of the most important diplomatic events in this part of the galaxy. Before he could answer, the crowd parted and two figures approached. Even without his translator, Marcus could tell these were the royal couple. They moved with grace and dignity, wearing clothing that seemed to be made of light itself. The male had golden skin and silver hair, while the female had deep purple skin and eyes that seemed to hold starlight. Welcome, warriors of Terra, Prince Kale said, his voice carrying across the gardens. Your arrival brings great honor to our celebration. Marcus realized they were trapped. They could not explain that they were here by mistake without creating a diplomatic disaster. They could not leave without seeming rude to people who were treating them as honored guests. And they definitely could not admit they had come here expecting to investigate criminal activity. His team was looking at him, waiting for orders. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy were watching them. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Marcus was starting to wonder if their crashed mission might turn into something much more important than gathering intelligence about weapons dealers. The royal wedding continued around them, and 5 human soldiers found themselves at the center of galactic diplomacy, still wearing full combat gear. Marcus stood frozen as Prince Kale approached their group. The prince moved with confidence, showing no fear of the 5 heavily armed humans who had just crashed into his wedding. Behind him, Princess Nira smiled warmly, her starlight eyes curious, rather than concerned. The entire crowd watched in respectful silence, waiting to see what would happen next. Your Highness, Marcus said, trying to remember basic diplomatic protocols from his training. He gave a slight bow, hoping it was appropriate. His tactical armor made the movement awkward, and his weapons clinked softly. Please, there is no need for such formality among warriors, Prince Kale replied. We are honored that Terra has sent representatives to witness our union. Though we must admit, we did not expect such a dramatic arrival. Marcus glanced at his team. Emma had her hand near her sidearm out of habit, but she was trying to look relaxed. David was probably recording everything through his helmet systems. Alex kept scanning the crowd with professional awareness, and Lisa looked ready to provide medical aid if anyone needed it. They all looked completely out of place among the elegantly dressed wedding guests. We apologize for the disruption, Your Highness, Marcus said carefully. Our navigation systems experienced some technical difficulties. Princess Nira stepped forward, her voice melodic. No disruption at all. Your arrival has added excitement to our celebration. The children especially are fascinated by your equipment. She gestured toward a group of young beings from various species, who were indeed staring at the humans, with wide-eyed wonder. Captain Thane cleared his throat. Your Highness, perhaps our Terra guests would prefer to prepare for the formal ceremony. We could provide quarters where they might adjust their presentation. Marcus realized Captain Thane was politely suggesting they change out of their combat gear. But they had no other clothes, and more importantly, removing their equipment would leave them vulnerable if they needed to extract quickly. Actually, Emma said, surprising everyone by speaking up, if it would not be inappropriate, we would be honored to serve as your honor guard during the ceremony. This is our formal dress uniform for such occasions. Marcus looked at Emma with amazement. She was thinking fast, giving them a reason to stay armed and armored while making it sound like an honor rather than a problem. Prince Kale's face lit up. Truly? Warriors of Terra would stand guard during our sacred ceremony. It would be our privilege, Marcus heard himself saying. He was committed now. Whatever happened, they would have to see this through. The next few hours became the strangest mission briefing Marcus had ever experienced. Captain Thane assigned each human a position around the ceremony area, explaining the wedding traditions and what was expected of them. The Veliosian marriage ceremony involved multiple phases, with different symbolic activities happening throughout the evening. Emma found herself stationed near the ceremonial fire displays. When the wedding coordinator, a nervous creature with 6 arms, worried about the timing of the pyrotechnics, Emma casually mentioned her expertise with controlled explosions. Soon she was helping calibrate the ceremonial fireworks, her demolitions knowledge proving surprisingly useful for creating beautiful rather than destructive effects. David discovered that his communications equipment could boost the signal for the wedding broadcast, which was being transmitted to both the Velios and Astrid systems so families could watch. His technical skills turned him into an instant celebrity among the media crews covering the event. Alex was positioned on a raised platform that gave him perfect overwatch of the entire ceremony area. His sniper training made him excellent at spotting potential problems in crowds, though he kept his observations to himself. What he saw was not threats, but thousands of beings celebrating in peace. Lisa ended up helping the wedding medical staff. Several elderly dignitaries were having trouble with the high altitude and thin air, and her field medical training was exactly what they needed. She moved through the crowd with quiet efficiency, helping anyone who looked unwell. Marcus found himself standing near the royal couple during the ceremony itself, officially serving as their protector, but actually trying to figure out how to extract his team without causing an interstellar incident. The ceremony was beautiful in ways Marcus had never imagined. The Veliosians had traditions involving light and sound that created patterns in the air above the gathering. The Astrid people contributed flowing movements that looked like dancing but told stories of their history. When combined, the two cultures created something entirely new and magical. Your people must have wonderful celebrations, Princess Nira said quietly to Marcus during a pause in the ceremony. We do, Marcus replied honestly, though they are usually less elaborate than this. All celebrations of love and unity are important, she said, whether they involve 2 people or 2 star systems. Marcus found himself genuinely moved by the ceremony. This was not just a wedding between 2 individuals. It was a peace treaty, a cultural exchange, and a celebration of hope for the future all combined into one event. The amount of planning and cooperation required must have taken years. That was when he started to understand what had gone wrong with Earth's intelligence. The massive coordination, the security presence, the unusual vehicle movements, all of it was real. But it was not criminal activity. It was the logistics of bringing together representatives from dozens of worlds for the most important diplomatic event in the region's history. The energy fields that had brought down their pod were not weapons or jamming equipment. They were part of the celebration itself, designed to create the beautiful light displays overhead. The arms deal Earth's intelligence had detected was probably the ceremonial exchange of gifts between the 2 royal families, including traditional weapons that held historical significance. As the ceremony continued, Marcus watched his team adapt to their unexpected role. They were still soldiers, but they were also diplomats now, representing Earth at a galactic event. None of them had trained for this, but they were handling it with the same professionalism they brought to combat missions. The crowd clearly appreciated their presence. Marcus overheard conversations about how impressive the Terra Honor Guard looked, how disciplined they were, and how honored everyone felt that humans had come so far to attend the wedding. Lieutenant, David's voice crackled softly through their comm channel. "I'm picking up some unusual energy signatures in the crowd. Not sure what they are." Marcus tensed slightly. "Hostile?" "Unknown. Could be more ceremonial equipment. Could be something else. Just thought you should know." Marcus nodded slightly and continued to scan the crowd while maintaining his ceremonial position. His team was trained to notice things that others missed, and if David was detecting unusual energy patterns, it might be worth investigating. Ceremony was reaching its climax with Prince Kale and Princess Nira about to exchange the traditional binding of stars, when Marcus noticed movement in the crowd that did not match the celebration patterns. Several figures were moving with purpose through the gathering, and they were not dressed like the other guests. His soldier instincts kicked in. Something was wrong here, and it had nothing to do with crashed pods or mistaken intelligence. There was a real threat developing, and his team might be the only ones positioned to handle it. The wedding celebration continued around them, but Marcus Reed and his team were about to discover that their mission was far from over. Marcus kept his expression calm while his mind raced. The figures moving through the crowd were definitely not wedding guests. They moved too deliberately, too carefully, like people who were trying not to be noticed. His years of combat experience told him these were professionals with a mission. "David," he whispered into his comm, "how many unusual energy signatures are you tracking?" "At least 6, maybe more," David replied quietly. "They're spread throughout the crowd, and the signatures are getting stronger." Marcus glanced at his team positions. Emma was still near the ceremonial fires. Alex had perfect overwatch from his platform. Lisa was moving through the crowd helping guests, and David was with the communications equipment. They were already positioned better than most security teams would be. The ceremony was reaching its most important moment. Prince Kale and Princess Nira stood at the center of a circle of light, holding crystals that contained actual starlight from their home systems. When they combined the crystals, it would symbolize the union of their peoples and officially end generations of conflict between Velius and Astrid. "People of two worlds," Prince Kale announced, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Witness as we join our lights and our lives in eternal peace." That was when Marcus saw the first weapon. One of the suspicious figures had moved closer to the ceremonial circle and was reaching inside his formal robes. The movement was subtle, but Marcus had seen it too many times before. Someone was drawing a concealed weapon. "Alex," Marcus said softly into his comm. "Suspicious target, you're 2 o'clock, 30 meters from the royal platform." "I see him," Alex replied. "And I see 2 more." "Boss, these guys are positioned for a coordinated attack." Marcus felt the familiar rush of combat awareness. Time seemed to slow down as his training took over. He could not simply start shooting in a crowd of innocent civilians, but he also could not let assassins kill the royal couple and destroy the peace treaty. "Emma," he said quietly, "can you create a distraction with the ceremonial fires? Something loud but safe?" "Already on it," Emma replied. "Give me 30 seconds. Marcus watched the assassins continue to move into position. They were good, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had planned for Veliosian security protocols, not for 5 human soldiers who specialized in unconventional warfare. "Lisa," Marcus whispered, "start moving civilians away from the ceremonial circle. Make it look like you're helping with the altitude sickness." "Understood," Lisa replied, already moving toward a group of elderly guests near one of the assassins. Royal couple raised their crystals toward each other, and the crowd held its breath. The ceremony was about to reach its climax, which Marcus realized was probably when the attack would begin. Maximum symbolic impact and maximum chaos. "David," Marcus said, "can you boost Captain Thane's communication frequency? I need to warn him without alerting the assassins." "Already working on it," David replied. "Patching you through now." Marcus activated his short-range transmitter. "Captain Thane, this is Lieutenant Reed. We have identified multiple threats in the crowd. Repeat, multiple hostile targets positioned for attack. There was a moment of silence, then Captain Thane's voice came back. Confirmed, Lieutenant. What do you need? Keep your people back and let us handle this. We're already in position, and the targets don't know we've spotted them. Understood. Royal Guard will provide backup, but will follow your lead. Marcus felt a surge of respect for Captain Thane. The Veliosian officer was trusting 5 strangers to protect his prince during the most important ceremony in generations. That took real courage. Emma's voice crackled through the cum. Distraction. In 5, 4, 3, 2. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the ceremonial fires, followed by a thunderous boom that echoed across the gardens. It looked like part of the ceremony, but it was loud and bright enough to startle everyone in the crowd. The assassins instinctively looked toward the noise, revealing their positions to Alex. I have visual on all targets, Alex reported. 6. Hostiles, all armed, moving to attack positions. The royal couple continued with their ceremony, unaware of the danger. They brought their crystals together, and beautiful light began to flow between them. The crowd watched in wonder, not knowing that death was moving through their ranks. Marcus made his decision. Take them down. Quiet if possible, loud if necessary. Protect the civilians. What happened next took less than 30 seconds, but Marcus would remember every detail for the rest of his life. Alex's first shot took down the assassin closest to the royal platform. The weapon made almost no sound, and the target simply collapsed behind a group of tall guests. Most people did not even notice. Lisa had positioned herself perfectly. When the second assassin reached for his weapon, she was right behind him with a medical injector that delivered a fast-acting sedative instead of medicine. He dropped unconsciously into her arms, and she lowered him gently to the ground as if he had fainted. Emma moved like lightning through the crowd, using her knowledge of pressure points and close combat to disable 2 more assassins before they could draw their weapons. Her movements looked like she was helping guests who had stumbled. David left his communication post and intercepted the 5th assassin, using his technical equipment to deliver an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the attacker's weapon and then knocked him out with hand-to-hand combat techniques that left 1 assassin, and he was the most dangerous. He had seen his companions fall and realized the plan was compromised. Instead of trying to complete the assassination, he pulled out what looked like a bomb and started shouting, "Death to the false peace." He yelled in a language Marcus's translator struggled with. "Let war return to cleanse the galaxy." The crowd panicked. People started screaming and running in all directions. The royal couple stood frozen in the center of the chaos, still holding their joined crystals. Marcus ran toward the bomber, knowing he would never reach him in time. The device in the assassin's hand was already glowing, indicating it was armed and ready. That was when Captain Thane proved why he led the Royal Guard. The Veliosian officer appeared from nowhere, moving faster than Marcus had thought possible. He tackled the bomber just as the device activated, carrying both of them away from the crowd. The explosion was smaller than Marcus had expected, but still powerful enough to knock everyone nearby to the ground. When the smoke cleared, Captain Thane was lying motionless next to the unconscious bomber, his ceremonial armor cracked and smoking. Lisa was already running toward them, her medical equipment ready. The crowd was in chaos, but the royal couple was safe, still standing in their circle of light with their crystals glowing between them. Marcus looked around at his team. They were all alive, all functional, and they had just prevented a massacre. But the ceremony was ruined, the peace treaty was in danger, and a brave Veliosian officer might be dying. "Status report," he called into his comm. "All targets neutralized," Alex reported. "Crowd control in progress," Emma said, helping calm panicked guests. "Bomber's device is disabled," David confirmed. "Captain Thane is alive, but injured," Lisa called. "Out," I can stabilize him." Marcus walked toward the royal couple, who were looking at him with expressions of shock and gratitude. Prince Kale still held Princess Nira's hand, and their joined crystals still glowed with starlight. "Your Highness," Marcus said, "are you both unharmed?" "Yes," Prince Kale replied, his voice shaking slightly. "Thanks to you and your warriors. You saved not just our lives, but the future of our peoples." Marcus looked around at the wedding that had become a battlefield and then become a wedding again. His team had completed their mission after all, just not the mission they had started with. They had protected innocent people, preserved peace, and represented humanity in the best possible way. The royal wedding would continue, but now it would also be remembered as the day human soldiers proved that Earth's warriors fought not just for conquest, but for protection of others. The garden slowly returned to calm as Lisa worked to save Captain Thane's life. Her field medical training had prepared her for battlefield injuries, and she moved with practiced efficiency. The Veliosian officer had taken the full force of the explosion to protect the wedding guests, and his breathing was shallow but steady. "He's going to live," Lisa announced after several tense minutes. "But he needs proper medical attention soon." Prince Kale knelt beside the injured captain, his royal robes trailing in the grass. "Thane has served our family for 20 years. He is more than a guard. He is our friend." Marcus watched as Veliosian medical teams arrived to take over Captain Thane's care. The captain's sacrifice had saved dozens of lives, maybe hundreds. As they carried him away on a hover stretcher, he managed to give Marcus a weak thumbs up, a gesture he must have learned from human broadcasts. The crowd was settling down, but the ceremony had been interrupted. Wedding guests stood in confused groups, unsure whether the celebration should continue. The royal couple still held their joined crystals, but the moment of unity had been broken by violence. "Your Highness," Marcus said to Prince Kale. "What happens now?" Princess Nira stepped forward, her starlight eyes fierce with determination. "Now we finish what we started. We will not let fear destroy our future." She turned to address the crowd, her voice carrying across the gardens. "People of Velios and Astrid, witness that our union cannot be broken by those who choose hatred over hope." The ceremony continues. The crowd responded with cheers and applause. Marcus realized that the attack had actually strengthened their resolve rather than weakening it. The attempt to destroy the peace had only made them more determined to achieve it. But there was still a problem. The investigation into who had sent the assassins and why they wanted to stop the wedding. Marcus gathered his team while the royal couple prepared to complete their ceremony. "The bomber is awake," David reported. "Captain Thane's people are questioning him now." "What did we learn about the others?" Marcus asked. Emma had been working with Veliosian security to examine the captured assassins and their equipment. They're part of something called the Hegemony. Apparently it's a group that wants to keep this region in conflict because they profit from selling weapons to both sides. Alex nodded from his Overwatch position. "Makes sense. A peace treaty would be bad for business if you're an arms dealer." Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind. "That explains our original intelligence. Earth picked up signals about a major weapons operation, but it wasn't a sale. It was a sabotage mission. The Hegemony was planning to use this wedding to start a new war." Lisa rejoined them after checking on several guests who had been injured in the panic. "The good news is everyone will recover. The bad news is this Hegemony group apparently has agents throughout this part of the galaxy." "But not here, not anymore," David said with satisfaction. "Local security is rounding up the last of their network based on information from the prisoners." The royal ceremony resumed with Prince Kale and Princess Nira once again raising their crystals. This time, when the lights joined together, the crowd erupted in celebration. The union was complete, the peace treaty was sealed, and the future looked brighter. Prince Kale approached Marcus as the formal ceremony concluded. Lieutenant Reed, your actions today have saved more than just our lives. You have preserved the hope of peace for millions of people across 2-star systems. We were just doing our job, Your Highness, Marcus replied. No, Princess Nira said, joining her new husband. You were doing much more than that. You could have left when you discovered this was not the mission you came for. Instead, you stayed to protect people you had never met. Marcus looked at his team. They had all made the same choice without needing to discuss it. When innocent people were in danger, they acted to protect them. It was what humans did. Your Highness, Marcus said, we need to contact our command and explain what happened here. They will want to know that Earth's intelligence was incomplete. Of course, Prince Kale replied. But first you must join our celebration. You are no longer accidental guests. You are honored friends of both our peoples. The wedding celebration that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Representatives from dozens of worlds shared food, music, and stories. His team found themselves at the center of attention, with beings from across the galaxy wanting to meet the humans, who had helped save the peace. Emma spent the evening teaching young Veliosians how to create safe fireworks displays, turning her demolitions expertise into an art form. David helped establish communication links between the wedding guests and their home worlds, so families could watch their representatives celebrate. Alex entertained a group of military officers with stories of human marksmanship, carefully avoiding any classified information. Lisa worked with local healers to share medical techniques from different worlds. Marcus found himself in deep conversation with diplomats and leaders, discussing Earth's potential role in galactic affairs. He was not trained for diplomatic negotiations, but he found that honesty and straightforwardness worked well with these people. Your species interests us greatly, said Ambassador Kell of the Astrid Confederation. We have heard rumors of human courage, but today we have seen it firsthand. Humans are not the only brave species in the galaxy, Marcus replied. Captain Thane proved that today. True, the ambassador agreed. But humans seem to have a particular talent for protecting others, even at cost to themselves. That is rare among the stars. As the celebration continued into the night, Marcus received a priority message from Earth. Colonel Harris appeared on David's communication screen, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. Lieutenant Reed, your mission report makes for interesting reading. You were sent to investigate weapons trafficking and instead ended up as honor guards at a royal wedding. Yes, sir. Our intelligence was partially correct but completely misinterpreted. The real threat was from a group trying to sabotage the peace process. And this group has been neutralized? Yes, sir. Local authorities have dismantled their entire network in this sector. Colonel Harris was quiet for a moment. Lieutenant, you do realize that you and your team have just become Earth's first official diplomatic contact with the Veliaz Astrid Alliance? The political implications are enormous. Marcus looked around at the celebration, at his team enjoying themselves among new friends, at the royal couple who had invited 5 strangers to protect their most important day. Sir, I believe the implications are all positive. We have an opportunity to build relationships based on mutual respect and protection of innocent people. Agreed, Lieutenant. Stand by for new orders. It looks like your mission is far from over. 3 months later, Marcus stood in a very different setting. He wore his dress uniform instead of combat gear, and he was surrounded by flowers instead of weapons. Emma stood beside him in a white dress, while Alex, David, and Lisa served as their wedding party. In the front row of the small Earth chapel sat 2 very special guests. Prince Kale and Princess Nira had traveled 40 light years to attend the wedding of the humans who had protected their own ceremony. The royal couple had insisted on serving as Marcus and Emma's honor guard, completing a circle of friendship that had begun with a crashed stealth pod. It is our privilege to protect those who protected us, Prince Kale had said when they arrived. As Marcus and Emma exchanged vows, he thought about the mission that had changed everything. They had been sent to gather intelligence about weapons dealers and instead had found something much more valuable. They had found allies, friends, and proof that humans had a place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The wedding ceremony ended with Marcus and Emma lighting a unity candle, a simple human tradition that somehow reminded everyone present of two crystals joining their starlight in a garden far from Earth. When the flame caught and held steady, the small congregation erupted in applause that seemed to echo across the galaxy. Later, as the celebration wound down, Emma found Marcus standing outside, looking up at the stars. "Thinking about Velias Prime?" she asked. "Thinking about the future," Marcus replied. "We started something important out there. We did our job," Emma said simply. Marcus smiled. "Yes, we did. We protected people who needed protection. And apparently, that's all it takes to make friends across the galaxy." Above them, the stars shone with the same light that had united two worlds and started a friendship that would last for generations. The mission was complete, but the story was just beginning.